I think we're going to have to take the model of the Phoenix. I think it is a false hubris to think that we can go in and reform these agencies. We cannot. It is going to have to be the model of the Phoenix when necessary. So one of the things, I actually haven't shared this, we're already working on our transition plan. The people we're going to staff, not just in cabinet level positions, that's what gets you press releases. Who runs the Office of Personnel Management? Who runs the Office of Management and Budget, OMB? That's like the CFO of the federal government. These are positions where I don't want people who are pro-government. I want fundamentally people who share my anti-government, anti-bureaucratic instincts to be bulldogs in those positions.
I'm qualified for the debate stage already. I tend to like settings where we're debating, so hopefully that goes well, and we'll see where this takes us.
Does anybody who's not a white male really stand a chance of being a Republican?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that there is
They don't seem like they're open to that kind of aggressive.
I'll be honest with you. I travel the country. I have not really experienced meaningful racism from grassroots conservative audiences for the last, several years that I've been, since I stepped down from my business career. That was a different world I was in. In fact, I just see a hunger for substance, ideas, what's actually going to make the country better. I actually am very encouraged by that. But anyway, I mean it as a good note. I don't think that there's some sort of racist obstacle in the mind of Republican primary voters. Actually, if you look at the Republican field, even some of those other people on that poll you were mentioning, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, go down the list. I mean, there's even others as well. Larry Elder, black man's running. I mean, I think we'll see who ends up succeeding. But whoever it is, I don't think it's going to be a racial bias that holds me back.
Why should people vote for you?
Yeah, so I'm somebody who is coming in as an outsider to the system. And I think in the White House, when it comes to the White House, if we really want to reform a lot of the corruption in government, it is going to take an outsider to get that job done. But you could fill in the blank with depression, anxiety, drug use, suicide. I think these are symptoms of a deeper hunger for purpose and meaning in our country. Revive family in America. That's actually a big part of my platform. What allowed me to achieve success. My parents gave me a great family foundation. I didn't grow up in money. We're trying to give that to my 2 kids as well. I want that to be enjoyed by Americans across the country. I think the same FBI that threatened Martin Luther King with suicide on the back of incorrectly collected tapes is now committing, I would say, hypocrisy and corrupt actions against people of a different political persuasion that the FBI doesn't like today.
So when is it that you voted for the first time?
I voted in 2020.
Okay, so you're how old again?
I'm 37 years old.
So for how many years you sat around and did not get involved at all in any civic engagement? Is that my understanding?
A long time is the answer.
And sir, I'm being as respectful as I possibly can. Please don't take anything
and you don't even have to be. And you don't even have to be. So take it off and let's go.
So you've been sitting around in the country that my ancestors built. In high school, were you ever a class president or take any leadership role? Because your opponent did.
Can I just correct a couple factual things that are kind of important? My parents didn't bring me over to the country. I was born in this country and I'm proud of that.
No, you've been here your entire life. So the question is, did you take any leadership role in middle school, high school, class president?
I did.
I know you played tennis. What is it? Explain it to us.
Student council. But I think that this is yes, I have held leadership roles over my life, but those don't qualify me to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Okay,
it kind of does. I'm giving the test. I'm the test administrator.
All right, there. And I want to talk about one early part of your premise that I also want to say, bring it to the country point. The other point, you use the word sitting around. I wasn't sitting around. I've developed medicines, 5 of which are FDA-approved products today, one of which is a life-saving therapy in kids, 20 of whom die by the age of 3 if they're not treated, 70% of whom now live lives of a normal duration. Another one for prostate cancer. So I've not served the country
because that means nothing to me.
You do what I'm talking. She hasn't been able to ask a question. She's been trying to ask a question, and you've been talking over it.
I'm all ears.
We gave you the platform to let you say.
I'm all ears. I'm all ears. No, I was just correcting a couple facts. That's all.
I'm saying, have you did anything of service that we can point to say he is a good leader?
So, the acts of service that I have performed are small, so small that I don't even want to talk about them to boast. But yes, have I volunteered for this country? Yes, I have.
Let me give you an example because maybe you can.
So, I've always been drawn to healthcare. That's why I ended up founding companies in that space. When I was in high school, part of what drew me into it was that I was a volunteer at a local hospital. I actually became the leader of that group of volunteers that actually discharged women who had recently given birth. That was it. Nothing big to it.
And to be honest with you, this is just a PR campaign, sir, to be honest with you. And I think you're trying to go further to the right because you want the Republicans to accept you as a man of color.
Once I want to be respectful. I want to make sure you got everything you wanted to on the table before I respond to that.
If this was just us, it'd be a lot more.
You guys tell me. I'm the guest on your show. You tell me when I'm good to speak.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
You sure? You sure about that? If we're good.
Yeah, we're sure.
So I think there's a different worldview that we have. And I think the worldview is how one actually makes contributions in a country. I do not believe that there's a separate category of just if you're serving the country and then if you're acting in self-interest, that that's somehow sinful or wrong. I reject that vision. To the contrary, I think capitalism is the best system known to man to lift people up from poverty. I deeply respect and I thank you for your service to this country. I'm grateful for it. I haven't served the country in the way that you have. But I think that the way you get ahead in capitalism, how did I develop a multi-billion-dollar biotech company? It was by developing medicines that save people's lives.
A lot of people say capitalism causes poverty.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Okay. There are phases of our lives where we do different things.
Well, you're moving straight all the way up to President of the United States.
You know, I don't view it as a hierarchy. I don't view it as a hierarchy. I don't believe in hierarchies. The hierarchy is the way the bureaucracy works. I don't believe in so we have a difference in opinion.
You also don't believe in service, and that's where we're having a disconnect.
Well, I disagree with you on that. I just disagree with you on that.
I do think it's whack that you're proposing to revoke voting rights for 18 to 24-year-olds unless they meet certain qualifications, but you never exercised your rights.
Well, so most young people don't, is the whole point. So, Charlamagne, let me ask you a question. Do you think the
largest voter turnouts have been over the last couple of elections?
They still voted at a very low rate, but let me ask you a question. What do you think about high school students being required to pass the civics test? What's your perspective on that?
The one that you proposed?
The one that every immigrant has to pass in order to enter the country. If every high school student has to pass that before they graduate, what's your take on that?
I don't think anything wrong.
Okay, good. Now let me tell you something about the law as it exists today. Men in this country, not women, but men are required by law to register with the Selective Service, age 18 to 25. That's the draft. We don't have a draft, but men have to register. If you don't, they put you in prison. At least they can. It's a criminal offense if you don't. My view is I would decriminalize that. I don't like the government telling you what you can and cannot do. That's not the American way. But if you want to enjoy the civic privilege of voting, then I think it is perfectly legitimate to say you have to at least know something about the country or have served that country, one or the other. Absolutely.
And they've done no service except to themselves. That's a fair question. It's a question, and you just
so I've been on the. I mean, look, I was on high school student council. Yes, absolutely.
Were you a leader? Were you a leader?
I was a vice president of my high school student council. Absolutely. I was the president of the National Honor Society. I was a lead amongst the volunteers at the hospital where I served growing up. I was actually a leader in volunteer research over the summers. From my senior year.
All of that, but you already admitted all of that was to get into college.
Not all of it, but I am admitting it. I think that
I know that's self-service, though. Do you understand the difference between self-service and service?
I think the reality is, and I think we just all have to be more honest. When many high school students are serving today, not all of them, but I think let's smoke it out. I don't like that structure. Let me just say one thing: here's my vision of the run for presidency, and this is why I say I'm an open book. Is my job is to make sure people in this country know who I am and what I stand for. And I think that very few politicians on either party actually get that job done. And you're free not to vote for me. I expect you won't, and that's okay. But I'm doing my job in being far more honest than any politician that I know in the last 10 years in this country. And I think when I say we want to fix corruption, you don't know what the first step is? The first step is actually people being honest.
What's your thoughts on people saying that you got Don Lemon fired?
I think that the New York Times reported that. I had an open debate with Don Lemon. What CNN wanted to do with that is their choice. My view is, though, we need to start saying in public the things that people are otherwise saying in private. There's a gap right now in the country. Let's admit it. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter.
You gotta be careful with that, because a lot of people in your party are going to start saying nigga out loud.
I don't think so, actually. And I would certainly hope not. I would condemn it if they do. I would condemn it if anybody does. All right? But what I think is we need to close the gap between what people say in private and what they say in public. That allows us to air our differences, and then we actually find unity that way. That's actually what I think unites the country, not creating this culture of hush-hush, right? Say one thing in public and a different thing in private. And I do reject Don Lemon's premise. What did he tell me on set? He said, you can disagree with me when you have black skin and you've lived in this country, whatever ethnicity you are. Explain it to me. I do not believe it is with race-based quotas. I believe it is economically empowering all Americans. Indian Americans do not benefit from affirmative action.
No, that's not as a point of fact. No, that's not as a point of fact. Because without the liberties that black folks have fought for, which has basically immigrants have been able to prosper in this country because of that. But we're not going to go there. Let's just say they benefited from being able to have the freedoms that black people fought for. That's the bottom line. And in turn, it benefited you. And then your answer a moment ago was, well, let's not talk about stuff in our past. See, once it benefited you, you were able to, you moved on.
I want to be honest with you. You guys want to get real. Let's get real. My parents were.
That's why the heart of the service. No, sir. Because black people hadn't fought.
Yeah, we gotta get real. My grandparents lived. They lived in a colonial society. Britain colonized where my grandparents lived as well. But I think that I don't do well by seeing myself as a victim of the white man, because actually Great Britain happened to have colonized where my grandparents were actually colonized.
That's moving the goalpost. I don't benefited your parents when they got here.
That's right.
What benefited all of us is the fact that we have a free country where anybody is free to achieve what they want. I don't know they came to this country with not a lot of money. What benefited them was hard work and dedication. My dad faced layoffs when he was growing up at GE. Right. He went to law school at night to be able to keep his job. What did that teach me?
Affirmative action benefited him?
I don't think affirmative action benefited him. Absolutely not. I think hard work and dedication benefited him. It's a fourth branch of government of three-letter agencies in Washington, D.C. That is a formula for corruption. Corruption we get. That's a system we need to break down. I mean, you could go down the list. SEC, FDA, EPA, TSA. The tens of thousands of government bureaucrats working in Washington, D.C., they're the ones who actually make the laws. It's not Congress. And that's a formula. And those people aren't elected. Nobody elected them. They're protected by these what are called civil service protections, which means even the president, technically, under many people's beliefs, can't fire them. That's the permanent state, what many in the right will call the deep state. I think that's a problem. Belief in the country, national pride. Less than 16% of Gen Z even says they're proud to be an American. I'm not making this one up. This is about a month ago. There was a good survey. 60% of young Americans said that they would sooner give up their right to vote than to give up access to TikTok or other social media. That's a problem. So I think we have a crisis of national pride.
Whose fault is that, though? That's America's fault. That's America's fault for constantly failing the people.
Well, I see it. I see it less about. We can allocate the blame. We can talk about allocating the blame. I think there's blame to go around. I think it's up to all of us to take a long, hard look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what is that vacuum in our heart? It's an old saying that goes, if there's a hole the size of God in your heart and God does not fill it, something else will instead. I think the same applies for belief in a nation as well. So I think what's going on is we're human beings. What makes us different from animals is that we can believe. We need to believe in something bigger than ourselves. And when we lose God and family and country, we start believing in new false gods instead. That's what's going on in the country. And so I don't know that it's so much a question of fault, but more a question of how do we actually revive our sense of self-confidence and pride.
It's definitely a question of fault. I can absolutely blame white supremacy. 100%.
Really?
Yeah.
See, say more, and then I'll respond to that.
I mean, just look at the history of the country. It's really just that simple. The country has never fulfilled its promises of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. It's always been freedom, liberty, and justice for some. Usually that's something.
So here's what I would say in response to that. That is obviously true that the nation has fallen short of our promise since our founding. But walk through some obvious facts about America. We're not founded on an ethnicity or a monarch or a food or even a religion. We're founded on a set of ideals that brought a group of people together in 1776, and we live by those ideals. At least we aspire to those ideals today. A nation that aspires to ideals that's not made up of gods, but made up of human beings, will always fall short of those ideals. So I think our worst hypocrisies as a country, and we have many of them, our worst hypocrisies are our best evidence that we have ideals at all. You take a look at other countries. Nobody ever calls the Chinese Communist Party a hypocrite, or China a hypocrite, or Iran a hypocrite. Why is that? Because to be a hypocrite, you at least had to have ideals in the first place.
But a lot of
and so we're imperfect, but we are about the pursuit of a more perfect union, the pursuit of happiness. America's about the pursuit. And so I think that trashing ourselves, I think we are, actually.
I say that is because, we never were included in those ideals originally.
Originally, but never originally are two different things. Originally, that's true. Over 250 years of progress, if you had somebody who was in 1870 looking at the world we live in today, if you had somebody in 1960 who was looking at the world we live in today as it relates to race in America, we would be darn close to what they would have thought of as the promised land. So I think we have to recognize that America is about that pursuit. We're a lot further along than we were 250 years ago. And here's the other thing, too. We got to set our expectations. We will always fall short of our ideals. By definition, if there are human beings and not gods living in a nation that aspires to ideals, we are fallen. Man is fallen. That's what makes us who we are. But what also makes us different from animals is that we have ideals. So America's founded on our humanity, that we can believe and aspire to something that we will still fall short of. That's what makes this country beautiful, and that's why I'm in this. You ask me, why am I in this? I care about reviving pride in that nation, because if we get into the habit of just bashing that country, what are we bashing? We're bashing the last best hope that man has for aspiring to those ideals. Tell me who else has done better. I'll wait.
I don't think I'm bashing the country. I think I'm bashing the system.
Okay.
I want to change. I want to change the system.
Well, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on changing the system. It's what brings me into this.
My message for you is, if you're going to require people to be a certain age to vote, you should have been able to meet that. My message for you is, if you're going to say that even if you can't do that, if you can't pass the test, then you need to be able to provide service to your country. You should have been able to provide service to your country. My message to you
is, if you disagree with me, you don't have to vote for me, but I respect your view, and we need to actually have a country where we need to have this debate in a way that doesn't personalize it.
That's all. I just wanted to point out the discrepancies on your platform versus what you've actually done, because that does matter.
What I want for the country is, I grew up in this country, and I want to actually lead the next generation to be proud. Well, I appreciate you wishing that for me. And I'm in this because I actually want to give back to a country that, yes, has allowed me to succeed in it. And I want to make sure that the next generation of Americans lives that same dream. Thank you very much.
And as a veteran, I want you to be a leader, and I want you to serve this country before you tell everybody else they got to serve it. That's all. We just have a difference of opinion.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
Is Vivek, did I say that right?
It's Vivek.
Tell them where to donate to your campaign.
Ramaswamy.
Yeah, it's Vivek Ramaswamy. You visit Vivek2024.com. You'll learn more about the campaign, and if the ideas speak to you, then come on and sign up.
I watch media coverage and everything's about race. And America is divided by race. That's America's original sin. It's the thing that cleaves us as a country. You didn't mention that. So why do they keep telling me that?
They blow what I call woke smoke to deflect accountability for their own failure, actually. So what do you think affirmative action has done for black people in this country? Nothing. What do you think? It's been negative. It's created racism that otherwise would not have existed. I've seen it. I have hired black executives at companies I have founded on merit. I could care less for the skin color. And then behind closed doors, people say, well, that person got their job because of race, because they're jealous because they weren't good enough to get the job. But that is sad. It's unfair to everyone involved. They'll blow woke smoke. They'll say math is racist. When in fact, what might be wrong is not teaching kids in the inner city for a year under COVID lockdowns how to do math. And then they're using this to cover up for that failure. I personally think that's actually what's going on in the U.S. military, too. Right? People wonder about where's this wokeness in the military coming from. I mean, our military has been disastrous in defining its purpose, how we're actually using the resources of a military to fight wars that we haven't actually shown great value from in the last 25 years. So let's just talk about systemic racism and white rage instead. It's a deflection mechanism. Companies do it, the military does it, schools do it, teachers' unions do it. It's irrelevant, and in fact, what would they ever do without those poor black kids who they could hold out as the sacrificial lambs for their own failures? What we actually need to do is to level up and say, no. Regardless of the color of your skin, how are we going to be a country that ensures opportunity, black, white, man, woman, doesn't matter? My parents came to this country with almost no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. And then people tell me, oh, that's because you had privilege. They tell me white privilege. It's sort of weird. It's sort of an interesting. It's kind of interesting.
Do you tell them?
I take the blindfold off, and now you have your answer. But But the interesting answer is, actually what I do tell him, Tucker, is that I did have privilege. I didn't grow up in money, but I had 2 parents in the house, a mother and a father, with a focus on education and a faith in God. And you know what? That is the ultimate privilege. That if I'm going to enjoy that, every kid in this country ought to enjoy it too.
Do you think, I just have to ask you this, do you, because you're not a political professional, do you think Biden's going to be the nominee?
So it depends on who the Republican nominee is. I'm running because at this point, actually, my heart says, I couldn't have told you this in February. I launched on your show, and honest to God, when I left, I had no idea how this thing was going to go. My gut instinct is that I will be the nominee and in a position to win this in a landslide versus Biden. And they will not let Biden run against me. So I believe that if I am the nominee, they will not let Biden run. It is why they're holding in the back pocket the documents case against Biden. It is why they're holding in the back pocket everything else that you're wondering why they're not charging or bringing now. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a managerial class, deep state bureaucratic class versus elected official puppets thing. And so they're not going to have to use that if it's Trump, because they think based on, they don't analyze, they analogize. They say we did it. We can debate that, but we appear to have done it. We appear to have done it, and so we'll do it again. So if it's Trump, they're going to run Biden. If it's me, there's no way they let Biden run. It's going to be a new puppet, Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama, you name it. It doesn't matter to me, though, because for me, whoever it is, I'm not running against anybody in this primary field. And I'm going to keep that philosophy in the general. I'm not running against whichever puppet they put up, Biden or somebody else. I'm running for our vision of what it means to be a citizen of this nation, the United States of America. I'm leading us to something, and nobody else is going to get in the way.
Thank you. Vivek, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tucker.
Thanks for watching.